Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge cycling podcast with Benji Naesen. Here is our World Championships preview. You'll have to forgive us. We're coming to you pretty much after it's already started, but it's a condensed season, it's a condensed schedule, and we still got to get it out. The women's individual time trial is taking place as we speak. Chloe Dygert, Brennauer and co haven't rolled off yet. It's about two-thirds of the way through. We'll still talk about our picks because we're not looking at the results. Maybe at the end, we'll do the TTs at the end of the pod, men's and women's TTs, and we're going to start with the men's road race, then do the women's road race second. And yeah, we're going to intro the route, parcours, the favourites, strongest teams, what we think tactically might be the best options for various teams, and yeah, try and do as full a preview as possible. How excited has this snuck up on you, Benji? I feel like with the route change as well, it's been the kind of under the radar that the World Champs is suddenly upon us, like 5 days after the tour finished.
Yeah, I think that's indeed a bit sneaking up on us, but in the end, we're diving really hard into cycling at the moment with this podcast, and I feel like I'm pretty on point with the current schedule of the next 2-3 weeks. But I do notice that when I'm talking about who's favorites for the Giro and such, that I mingle them with the people that are going to the classics, and I often forget that the classics are during the Giro, so that's impossible to ride both of them. And yeah, calendar-wise, it's really hard this season, but in the end, I don't mind it because more cycling in a condensed period, I certainly like that. And with all the changes in parcours, it was a bit of a mystery where we would end up.
Yeah, so I've forgotten the parcours for Martigny already. I think Martigny had longer climbs. That was the original location for the World Champs before COVID hit, and it wasn't possible in Switzerland. That was where the UCI where the UCI is based, rather, in Martigny. But anyway, the parcours for the men's road race and women's road race is exactly the same route. 5 laps for the women, I think 9 laps for the men. Men's road race, 258 kilometres, and all I'm going to say to you is Liège-Bastogne-Liège. That's what the betting market suggests the favourites are, or like who the favourites are for this race, are the sort of riders you'd expect at the pointy end of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. And I think I saw, Benji, it was like 5,000 metres of climbing or something ludicrous across those 258 kilometres. No long climbs, by the way, either. 9 laps, and there's 2 climbs in each lap. The Mazzolano, 2.2 Ks at 7.1%. There's also a gradual, uncategorized climb before that, and then after that they do a descent, then a very short valley, and then a second climb, the Cima Gallisterna, 2.3 Ks at 7.3%. So both of them seem to be pretty much about the same distance, but a different sort of gradient. So the first climb in Mazzolano is steep at the start, then flattens out, and it's pretty much almost a plateau at the end. The last K is only 3.5%. That's the first climb. The second climb in each lap, the Gallisterna, is 3.8, 2.9%, about 3% for the first K, and then very steep, 12%, then 11.3%, so about 11.7% for the middle kilometre, and then it flattens out a little bit, 5% for the last 500 metres. So it's a hard circuit, starting and finishing in Imola. I'm pretty sure that's where it's an F1 circuit or something like that. I should know that as a recent F1 fan. After watching Drive to Survive, cycling could learn a thing or two. But yeah, hard circuit, Benji. What do you think? Do you think it's too hard? Do you think this is unfairly, like when they make a route like this, does it limit too much the sort of riders that can actually win to maybe 5 riders rather than a random winner that we saw at Yorkshire last? Well, not a random winner, Mads Pedersen, fantastic rider, but he was still over 100 to 1 to win. So do you think this sort of route is too difficult?
I don't think so. I think that the original route in Martigny was actually harder, and it was by Nibali and such named the hardest route the World Championship has seen in ages. And generally looking at this parcours, it seems a tiny bit easier than that, but obviously I don't need to ride it, so I can safely say it's easy from my computer here. So that's an unfair statement, really. It's a rough parcours. I don't think it really condenses the amount of people that can win this to 5 people. There's quite a few riders that are dark horses to me and could do very well here that are not necessarily in the top 10 favorites. So we're going to go over them in a second here. But yeah, I've got quite a few outsiders that could really play an important role here.
Yeah, so obviously Mads Pedersen, I mentioned him. He's not even participating. He's not going to be able to defend his World Champs jersey. I would like to just say at this point, I think it's a real shame Pedersen, not really anyone's fault, but still a real shame that he wasn't able to wear that World Champs jersey in the Ronde van Vlaanderen and Paris-Roubaix and the Classics. Yeah, just a shame. He did obviously great work in Tour de France, but would have been fantastic to see the young Dane wearing that in his races where he'd be the team leader for Trek Segafredo. But let's go through a few of the favourites in the men's race. And first on the sheet is Wout van Aert, the man of the moment from the Tour de France, packing up straight away from the Tour. He's first favourite. Now, we're not suggesting these are the odds we'd select, but these are just what the market is saying the favourites are for this race. And it's an easy way to frame the discussion that way. But Van Aert is being given about a 22% chance of winning world champs. Maybe it's really, and then Alaphilippe is about 15 to 16%. He's second favourite. Fulsang, maybe about 11, 12%. Obviously, we just won Lombardia, and did he win Liège-Bastogne-Liège in 2019? I'll just say that he did.
Yes.
Tadej Pogacar, the Tour de France winner, fourth on the list. He's been given about a 7% chance of winning. Mike Woods, who showed out in Liège last year too, I think attacking Fulsang. He's fifth favourite. Roglic, sixth favourite. Hirschi, seventh favourite. Valverde, eighth favourite. Kwiatkowski, ninth. Tom Pidcock, the British rider, is the 10th favourite. And then Ulissi, who had a pretty good Tour of Luxembourg, I think, is about 20 to 1. So about 5% chance of winning. Schachmann there. Dumoulin, Nibali, Michael Matthews, Carapaz, Koos. And then we're getting into the real long shots with Van Avermaet, Lutsenko, Wellens, Igita, Agioli, the quick-step Italian rider. He won a nice stage. Can't remember which stage race, one of the tune-ups. He looked really good. Danny Martinez, Uran, Richie Port, Teish Benoit, and Rui Costa. But that's now the 100 to 1. So when I said that it was a pretty short market, well, there's three that are under 10 to 1 with Wout van Aert, Alaphilippe, and Fulsang. So that, they're really showing who people think will win the race. Obviously, Alaphilippe needs no introduction, nor Wout van Aert. And Fulsang's already proved himself on this sort of parcours as well in Lombardia and Liège last year. But having said that it looks like a hard course, I'd be reluctant to go with those three, to be honest. I actually think a man who's won world champs before, who's can look after himself, who looked very, very good at the end of the Tour de France. I see Mikhail Kwiatkowski being in just as good a level as Julien Alaphilippe at this point. Coming out, all these riders, four of them coming out of the Tour. Even Hirschi as well, Benji. And Valverde rather. I'm sorry, I just reminding myself, like 8 of these top 10 have just finished the Tour de France. And surely we have to base our opinions, or I'm basing my opinion, on how they looked in that last week of the Tour. Maybe the rest will change things, but yeah, does that affect your opinion on these riders' chances, what we saw in the last week, particularly Valverde coming into his own?
Yeah, we said it in the last week that we expected Valverde to tune up his form a bit more in this third week of the Tour de France and then move towards the World Championships. And I feel like he's done that. This was his main first goal of the season, and he is looking like he will play an important role here. But what is very important with all these teams is the fact that they've got a team behind them, and that team needs to stick together and work together to try and achieve it for either a leader or one of their mates, one of their teammates. But there's a few teams that are really strong here, but there's a few teams that I'm not exactly sure if they can cooperate well to gain a victory. And therefore, I'd like to dive into the teams of the favorites in a second as well. But if we look at the third week of the Tour de France, yeah, Wout van Aert is named the clear favorite. And the thing is, I believe he's getting a bit too much of a favorite role right now, even though we've seen
Agree with
that
you.
he can do everything. Well, basically, an example. This morning I opened my local newspaper. It's Belgium, so probably the reason why this article even exists. But it literally said, well, we might have a historical moment with him winning 2 world championships in the next week, but he hasn't even won one yet. Give him a break. Put the pressure down. Let him win one by one and let him focus on one goal by one goal. We can see if he has a time trial. We can see if he has a road race. I believe one is going to be more likely than the other. but in the end, I don't see him winning both of them. And yeah, I believe that it's harsh to put pressure on two races already if you don't know how the first one will go. So I want to keep it at a low profile. Even as a Belgian, I'm obviously supporting my nation, but I feel like there's plenty of other people at the sideline here that have a relatively similar chance of winning due to the fact that once you've got a favorite role like Vinard, Alaphilippe, less Fulsang here in my honest opinion, but they're going to look at him as well. I feel like they're going to look more at Vinard and Alaphilippe because they have more of those punchy moments where they can try and launch something. Fulsang will be more of an attrition fight, I would expect, towards the end of this race. And because of that, if they're watching those two riders, then I expect that a third rider could benefit off of that, get a bit of a gap. They would expect the team of those two riders to control the race and catch those riders, and maybe we'll have a situation where a third party rider that is in the top 10 favorites or even below, like a Bagioli, because he's one of my outsiders, that he can benefit off of that situation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Wout van Aert's too short, and I spoke about it last year, and it reminds me of last year. Like the hype around MVDP going into World Champs Road Race last year was crazy. He was like 3-1 before the race, which was way too short. That was sort of coming off like Amstel Gold. Obviously, his victory there was that year in 2019, and I kind of see a similar thing happening with Wout van Aert, as well as the Belgian team. And you've raised this as well separately, Benji, without me saying it. They don't really work too well together, these guys. Their team, Thijs Benoot, Naesen, Peter Seri, Jasper Sturven, Wout van Aert, Greg van Avermaet, Loic Vligan, who I think he's done actually pretty well this year so far, and Tim Wellens. We saw those guys failing to cooperate when they should have, even when they were on their trade teams in the Tour de France. But last year I put out a video before the World Champs, I think it was, talking about how they should combine, how they could have tactically worked to roll over Peter Sagan and MVDP in the World Champs. They underperformed last year. Obviously, Gilbert crashed, I think, and then Evenepoel was like comforting him, etc. But it wasn't a strong showing from Belgium from memory, especially when MVDP went up the road. And I kind of see a similar thing happening this year. And we'll talk about how the other teams should work tactically to, give themselves the best chance of winning. I think Van Avermaet, nice, and Sturven's good on the flat, but how useful is he going to be in a race like this? Not that useful. Same with Oliver Naesen at the moment. Bennett and Wellens, probably going to be, I'd be sending them up the road, to be honest, and trying to take some pressure off Wout van Aert. I wouldn't be trying to go in and be like, we're the dominant team here. I would just be using them to, send them up the road and break so Belgium don't really have to chase and Van Aert can sit on. That's how I think they should play this, and try and keep the pace as low as possible, because if this comes down to a reduced bunch sprint, like Van Aert is going to be the heavy favourite. Because even like someone like Degenkolb or Sam Bennett I see on the start list, like that ain't happening. Even if they crawl over the climbs. But I'll give you, Benji. Do you think, am I being too harsh on Belgium, or is that a known thing in Belgium? Is that discussed, or is like, do the papers ever get into maybe these guys don't work too well together?
I don't think the papers really dive into that too much, but in general, I do see a general feeling that we've got a good team, but they need to work together to make something happen. And I think one of the reasons that we haven't achieved too much on the road race recently, I might give a bit of a controversial statement here, but I've got the feeling that it's not always the fact that they don't work together well. I find that the tactics used by the head coach of the country aren't always the greatest, and because of that, we often start races, world championships with multiple leaders in situations where one of them certainly deserves the head crown. In this situation, we've got Van Aert on the start list. If you have Van Aert in the team, he's your leader. That's it. He's hands down your leader. You can adapt in race if he fails to do so, but I feel like you can't step into a race like this with Van Aert in your team and have Van Avermaet as co-leader. Now, one of the things that might be controversial about it is the fact that our head coach is, I think, the brother-in-law of Van Avermaet. So I feel like that mingles with being a fair selection of a national team. And because of that, I think you're always going to have a situation where Van Avermaet is leader of the team as much as someone else in the team who is performing much better. And maybe that's a harsh statement to someone that potentially does his job well, so I don't want to accuse him of doing that on purpose. But if you've got this year, Van Avermaet is not at the level that he can be a real leader here compared to Van Aert. So if I was the head coach, I'd go for Van Aert. I'd have plenty of people surrounding him. I'd have Van Avermaet maybe as one of the last men to actually do something. But in the end, I would go for Van Aert, and if Van Aert fails, then you can adapt mid-race to someone who is in a good position in the race. But yeah, I feel like it's going to be weird to see them dive into this race with Van Aert just as equally leader as Van Avermaet to me, which is an issue I have. You said, for example, that Stuyven might not be an important role here. I think he might be one of the most important ones on the list here, together with City, Bennett, and Vligan. I'm not sure about Wellens' form. That's one of the issues I have. Oliver Naesen, he can climb, but I just don't know. I don't know what to expect from him. And because of that, I can't judge whether he's going to be useful on this terrain or not. He's probably going to be useful somewhere near the earlier parts of the race. If he can get far, greater for the squad, but it's going to be pretty tough. Seri is one of the lads in this team, together with Vligan, that I'm very much looking forward to see how they ride. I think they're very underrated. Peter Seri was third in the Belgian National Championships this week, and he did that after crashing out in one of the corners where he was launching away from the front group with about 6K to go. Then he caught up with the chasing group. He tagged from the chasing group and then ended up sprinting to second in that chasing group, so third in the race. So he's in really good form. Loic Vligan, really underrated in my honest opinion. He's riding for, I generally don't even remember what team he's riding for. I think it's Wallonie-Bruxelles, but I'm not sure about it. No, it's Wanty these days. And
No,
he was
once a group
pretty
event.
great at Tour de Wallonie. Yes, indeed. He was 11th at Tour de Wallonie, and he always makes these pretty good decisions where he follows the right wheels into attacks in the last few kilometers. And his main upset so far was the fact that that group was always unable to make it to the line because the cooperation with other people wasn't great. He won the Tour de Deux, I think, this year,
Yes.
just ahead of Girmay and Paré-Pantre. So I believe he's one of those people that are in the team that a lot of Belgians might ask, why is he in the team? Because we've got Dylan Teuns and such on the sideline. But I really believe that he's one of the riders that totally deserves to be on there. So honestly, it's a strong team. They got to find a way to work together. I trust it, but I am going to be quite skeptical if I see that there's moments where they can work together better, leading to a better result. So I'm going to judge them if it fails, but I will be glad as a Belgian if it doesn't.
And you're missing three important riders as well. Gilbert injured, and he is back racing, but I think not at a level to be in the World Champs team. And obviously Remco Evenepoel injured. And with Remco being injured, Dries Devenens isn't in this race, that was the surprising omission. And that's where we're really seeing the trade team stuff and Lefebvre maybe and Quickstep affecting the Belgian selection for this race, because with no, apparently it looks like with no Remco, then Dries Devenens, who was obviously riding as a domestique in Lombardia on the, I can't remember, the second to last major climb, maybe the Ghisallo. Before then, yeah, he was setting pace for Remco. He'd be good in this race, very useful, Dries Devenens. He's not been picked, or he didn't pick himself. He said, I'm not available. So that's a little bit interesting, but that's a lot of time spent talking about Belgium. Obviously, Benji's pretty happy about that. Let's go to the second favourite in his squad, and pretty good team, in my opinion, actually. The French team with Alaphilippe. He's got Kenny Elissonde, who looked pretty good for Trek Segafredo. He couldn't help really the pointy end of races for Port, but he was still looked pretty good. Guillaume Martin, 11th on GC. Valentin Madouas, he was there or thereabouts, getting in breakaways, very active. Rudy Mollard, Quentin Pacher, very, very active in breakaways and looked good as well. B&B Hotel Vital Concept rider, and Nance Peters, who won a stage in the Tour de France, and Voyage du Le Mondial. They're all, and Julien Bernard, is there as well. They're all there in support of Julien Alaphilippe, but very nice squad, I think. Like quite a good supporting cast for Alaphilippe, and he should be. Yeah, I'm not sure Quickstep could put a squad for this. Oh, they probably could, but yeah, Do you think they're going to ride? They're all riding 100% for Alaphilippe, Benji? Do you think their tactics will be use Pacher and Nils Peters to get them into breaks up the road? That's what I would do. I would send two of Marouin, Martin, Pacher, and Peters up the road. I would send try and get two of that group of four up there. I'd leave Alessandro protecting Alaphilippe. He's good at that. And Guillaume Martin, and Rudy Mollard protecting as well, and maybe Julien Bernard. I'm not really sure what his role will be. Exactly, he's sort of a GC rider for Trek Segafredo. But yeah, that's how I would see. Just protect Alaphilippe and then let him loose with as much energy conserved as possible on one of the last two climbs, and use those other riders to get in breaks, take pressure off pacing, and then the other two that remain, or the other three or four that remain, to mark moves from other riders attacking early. Like Fulsang ain't going to the line with Wout van Aert, so there's going to be attacks. Same with Mike Woods. Same probably with Pidcock, etc. So yeah, that's going to be interesting how that plays out. Whether Alaphilippe is going to hope that the race is hard enough that maybe, is it ever hard enough for Wout van Aert to get dropped on climbs anymore in this new world? Or is he going to back himself in a sprint against a reduced bunch? He probably would against a lot of these riders if they're not sort of the Michael Matthews types there. If it's Woods and Fulsang, Alaphilippe's going to be happy going to the line with them. If it's a group with Wout van Aert and co, he's going to want to attack. Dumoulin's going to attack early too for the Netherlands. So yeah, do you think I'm overrating that French squad, or do you think they could actually have a sneaky good team, kind of like Poland has in previous years? Like for Kwiatkowski, Poland had a sneaky good team and did well for him in that World Champs win.
I think you've got a pretty good team here, and I would say that Bernard is probably going to take up a role of Barrier in the middle of the stage somewhere, because I think he's more of a Barrier than a GC guy, in my honest opinion, for Trek. And because of that, I'm expecting him to be in the breakaway for sure. And in the team itself, Nils Peters, Pacher, I'm really happy to see that Veuclair, who is the head coach, decided to go for riders that really showed themselves in the Tour de France, the most important race in their country. And Nils Peters, Quentin Pacher, we've got Madouas, Calisson was pretty good in the Tour as well. Alaphilippe was a bit mad, but maybe because of the Tour de France, he can have built himself up towards the World Champs a bit more. I feel like Alaphilippe is going to be one of the two riders with Van Aert that all the teams are going to be looking at for attacks on the last two hills. So I'm expecting that to be a real hard thing for them. They got to find a way to be able to control the race then, and they're going to be expected to do so quite a bit, which will probably not happen because Belgium is pretty great at controlling races that aren't necessarily needed to be controlled. So France might be pretty lucky there. I agree with most of your tactics, actually, but I think that their main strategy is going to be use Guillaume Martin a bit early and respond to early attacks with Martin, maybe Julien Alaphilippe for the final punch. But we've seen already in previous years, I think in Amstel last year, with Fulsang attacking early, Alaphilippe attacking early with him, this might become a race alike because it's going to be a war of attrition, I think. It's going to be more of a race where it's decided over who's going to survive through all these hills compared to who's going to beat them on the last hill. I don't think it's going to be just a final hill battle. I think it's going to be, we're going to see people drop throughout the whole race, and there's going to be plenty of DNFs because once you've got a circuit of 28 kilometers, everybody can step off their bike that is done at the end of the circuit. So yeah, I believe that you're going to have a situation where it's going to be more of a battle over multiple climbs or multiple laps even, and not necessarily that they're all going to wait for the last climb to make a serious move.
Yeah, and we should say it's not an uphill, like it's not a hilltop finish. It's like a descent, gradual descent, it looks like, for the last 10 kilometers. So the rider that does go clear on that last climb, are they going to be able to hold it to the line? Someone like Wout van Aert, obviously yes, but maybe a pure climber, no. The third strongest team, and we've got to talk about them, how they've they've just taken the world of cycling by storm. Slovenia look to me like they have the third strongest team. Maybe I'm discounting Germany a little bit, but I don't think so. They've got Yanni Brakovic, who will be familiar to you all, the veteran. Luka Mezgec, who looked magic at the Tour de France, 2 second places on stages. Domin Novak, Luka Pebernik, Tadej Pogacar, the Tour de France winner, his UAE lieutenant, Jan Polons, Jan Tratnik, who's obviously a pretty strong rider for Bahrain McLaren, good time trialist, decent sprint, and Primoz Roglic, the second place in the Tour de France. And they're both top 6 favourites. Pogacar's 4th favourite, Roglic looks like he's 6th favourite. What an incredibly strong team Slovenia are taking to this World Champs. Obviously, Roglic and Pogacar have never won a one-day race of this caliber. They've never won a Monument or Fletcher. Obviously, Roglic has destroyed a lot of those Italian Fletch Bologna.
Flesh Wallon, but it was funny how you pronounce it. It was like Italian. Sorry, keep up.
It's Fletcher now. I'm moving the race to Italy.
Okay.
Roglic has never. They maybe. They're new. Pogacar's obviously just come into the World Tour in the last 2 years, and Roglic as well is pretty new as well. But he's won Tre Valli Varsine, Primoz Roglic, but Pogacar, I wouldn't count him out of doing anything. 4th favourite, I think. I know he came like top 12 in MSR. 12th in MSR, 13th at Strada Bianca, but I don't know. I feel like that's a little bit short. 4th favourite. The team he's got there, it's a pretty strong team, but DNF Amstel Gold last year, 53rd at La Flèche Wallonne, 18th in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He's probably still a different rider and improved from last year, from 21 to 22. We saw that in the Tour, but how exhausted will he be coming off the Tour de France? What will their tactics be? Like, who are they riding for, Benji? Or are they just going to keep them safe and just tell them, okay, you or Tadej or Primoz, just follow Van Aert or Alaphilippe on whenever they go and see how you go?
I think that it's going to be a cooperation between those two leaders. Compared to Belgium, you've got one rider where it's, clearly he's a favorite for Van Aert. But in this team, you've got Pogacar, you've got Roglic, 2 of the riders that have amazing watts in 10-minute efforts. And on these hills, that is going to matter as well. What I feel this team has is 2 leaders, and then there's limited help behind that. You've got a Polans who's going to be pretty important, but Domin Novak was Slovenian champion, I think, last year or 2 years ago, one of them. I believe he hasn't done much all season now. I think he got DNS or DNF at Strade, I think. I saw him on that list a few months ago. A month ago? Oh my god, Strade was so close. Anyway, I think he hasn't really done much in the Italian Classics, so I'm not expecting too much from Domin Novak. He was a decent climber in the past, but I feel like he's turned it down a little this year, and I think he transferred outside of Bahrain, but I'm not sure about it. Luka Pibernik, we know him from one moment in his history where he celebrated around early in the Vuelta, so let's hope he doesn't do that here. But I don't think he's going to be there 1 round from the finish anymore. Don't believe he's good enough. Mijani Brajkovic, when he's not complaining on Twitter, he's actually a decent climber, so I'm expecting him to be up there towards the end of the race. So I'm looking forward to seeing him up there. Jan Tratnik can do stuff. I'm not sure how long he can last. These are punchy climbs, and I think that will hurt Tratnik more than, for example, a rider that has more punch in them and that can handle these steeper bugs a bit more. Roglic Pogacar, that's going to be a duo, and I'm wondering if they can work together well. I think they're going to be working together pretty well, and they're going to want to get Slovenia's first world champion, which is, I think, a goal of both of them. Pogacar has his Tour de France. Roglic doesn't have anything yet. Would be great for both of them. For Pogacar's guilt of taking away the yellow jersey from his countrymen, and for Roglic to replenish his mental strength here. So I believe that they're a strong team, but it's mainly because 2 riders are the spear point of it, not really a really well-formed all-round team, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. Obviously, Spain, they'll be riding, I think, for Alejandro Valverde, but I'm not sure. I'm looking on this list. Enric Mas, Marc Soler, Mikel Landa, Peo Bilbao, Luis Leon Sanchez, David de la Cruz, Hazel Serrada. That's a not as Valverde's not the level probably of Roglic or Pogačar, but that is a stronger team than the Slovenian team. Like Hazel Serrada, for example, can get into breaks. De La Cruz looked actually pretty good in places for Pogačar when it was going full gas in the Tour de France. Pale Bilbao, the same for Bahrain McLaren. He even got it in a break, and yeah, he got dropped by Carapaz, but he'd done good work the stage before for Bahrain. Soler rode not very smart, but still had good watts. At the Tour, Mas came fifth, Landa came fourth. It's a pretty good squad, except they're really, when it comes down to it, and everyone attacks on that final climb, all these riders are just kind of good. And there's only one that can really go with the big guns, in my view, and that's Valverde. He hasn't shown the punch that he has had in previous years. I know he looked better in the Tour, but I don't think Valverde is going to be competing for top five or contesting it really in this year's World Champs. Maybe that'll come back to bite me, and the 48-year-old will take out the W like in 2018. But if it's a sort of race where Roglic and co are up there, and rather than Wout van Aert, and it's a reduced bunch sprint or over the final climb, I just don't see him being able to beat them in a sprint. But hey, it's World Champs. You never know with Alejandro Valverde. On to Colombia, and I just want to give a dark horse and not talk about their team too much, but one of my dark horses for the World Champs, I think he's like 500 to 1, Sergio Henao, second in Flesh Ballon many years ago, I think, and looked pretty good in Tirreno, I think. And yeah, he's probably not going to win, but he could win. Like, I think he is capable of winning or coming top 3 in this World Champs. World Champs, weird things can happen. You look at the sort of top 10 list across the years and you're like, oh, geez, really? They came top 10 like multiple years in a row? I think Sergio Henao can do pretty well on this sort of parcours. Who's one of your dark horses, Benji?
In Colombia or outside of them? Because I've got a few
Anyone.
outside of them. I would, first of all, like to show our attention towards the Italian team. Does not have the final list yet, I think, of the people that are going to ride it. They enjoy selecting their riders on the moment, on the spot, which is kind of weird because I'm expecting them to just go to, for example, a Nicola Conci and basically say, well, sorry that you came to Imola, mate, but you can go home now, which is kind of sad. I don't know how that works, but just feels like it's a bit unfair towards those riders. Getting on the pre-selection is something, and you get your confirmation before the race actually happens. That would be great, but if you decided on the spot, it's kind of lame in my honest opinion. But that's maybe just me. On this list, we've got a few riders that can do everything in this race without you expecting it. And what I mean with that is, well, the rider I expect the least of as leader here is probably their leader, which is Vincenzo Nibali. I, as a very big Nibali stan and fan, I believe that any race he starts, he has an opportunity of winning if he comes into the right situation. I have a really hard time figuring out how he's going to do it this year because in Tirreno, who was much weaker than he is usually in his preparation races. He's usually not great in his preparation races, but this is a really small amount of days between Tirreno and this World Championship. So I'm a bit unsure how you can really manage to get into a decent form for this and be able to properly contend in this race after that Tirreno. But you never know. Never count out the shark. He can dive into that descent like a maniac. But outside of him, my dark horse, Andrea Baggioli, or at least one of my dark horses, because he's won a stage in Copia Bartali, and I think some other stages in the season as well. And I can name them right now. The first stage of Tour de l'Ain? No. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct, right? Yes, that is correct. I remember now. He won that in a bit of a...
surprise winner.
Yeah, indeed. A surprise punchy sprint against Roglic Bissiga. And that's the one Dumoulin actually pulled Roglic towards the sprint in the end. So there were quite a few unknown names in that top 10 in the form of like Giacomo Garavaglia and Eric Vetter of Cometa, who are probably going to be pretty good guys in the future if they can continue their growth. But going back to the World Championships, Andrea Baggioli, he's got that punch. He can get over the hills. I think he's going to get a top I think he can genuinely top three this race if he gets into the right
Oof.
situation. I genuinely believe that he is one of the highest odd dark horses on this list. And yeah, what is your take on Bagiola? Do you believe that he can do something? After that, I'll name some of my other dark horses.
Oh yeah, I think when he won that stage ahead of Roglic, I was like, this is the man who's gonna in 2021 he'll be competing for top five in Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. So why not now? These seem to be carried that form through in the smaller Italian races. What was it? Settimana Internazionale Coppi e Bartoli. So he came second on GC there, won one stage. One was a TTT. Yeah, he looks in great form. This is a parcours that's suited for him. Why not now? Why not before we expect him to do well? You know, Italy got Bettiol, Brambilla. It isn't the final team. I expect them. They should take Matteo Fabro. He looked pretty good in Torreno. Um, Diego Ulissi, they have to take, obviously. I think he's like a top 10 favourite. He did well at Luxembourg, looking in pretty good form. Just a really underrated, consistent rider. But do I think he can win? No. Sorry, I'll let you go back to your dark horses, Benji. George Bennett, though, speaking of other Italian tune-up races, he won Gran Piemonte, second in Lombardia. George Bennett will be riding for New Zealand, but I didn't like the form we saw out of him in Tour de France. He said he wasn't having a good time there either, and I don't expect him to be back in that level of form. But who's your other dark horses rather?
I'll use the Ulysses segue because I'll jump into a rider that does great in similar races. They both do great in Quebec and such, but I believe that Michael Matthews is one of my dark horses, and it's one of the first names I named when I saw him ride in Tirreno like a mad lad on, I think, the third stage, which had a rather massive climb with about 30 kilometers to go. He went over that, beat the likes of Carretero, and so dropped them in that ascension and got away in the breakaway there. He then got taken back by a storming peloton, but he was a breakaway rider that day, which was fun to see. And I feel like he might have done that with the world champs in mind. And yeah, it's one of his dreams to win the world championships. And I believe that with this parcours, he has a real opportunity of doing it. But just like Ulisi, he needs the race to fold in a certain way. We can't expect Matthews to attack away on the final ascension. He has to be with the people that are attacking and try and stick to the real punches to try and survive that. I believe he can do that, but it needs so many puzzle pieces to fit together to have it happen. But he's certainly on my dark horse list. Dark horse list. Wow.
Dark horse list. We're not editing that out. Who is the only man to ever hold Philippe Gilbert's wheel when he attacked on the Karlberg in the last 10 years? One man.
Kwiatkowski?
Michael Matthews. Michael Matthews in
Did
Amstel
Kwiat do
Gold.
it again as well?
Nah, I'm ignoring that. I don't think he did. But even if he did, it doesn't count. Michael Matthews is in the form of his career climbing-wise. He's lost, I think he's the lightest of his career, under 70 kilos. He's climbing well at Terreno. He looked good at MSR, considering he lost half the skin off his right hand. Still managed to come third behind the two top favourites for this race, Alaphilippe and Wout van Aert. He looks in fantastic form. He's got Simon Clark, the EF rider, who is really good in races like this. I think Clark he's a fantastic addition on this team, for the Australian team. Richie Port, pretty sure he's riding the race as well. Him and Jai Hindley, good climbers, obviously. So I don't know what their strategy will be. I think it will be just 100% try and protect Matthews. I think that's the best way, the best way for the Australian team to get the W. I just can't see any of the other riders actually winning the race. But yeah, they actually do have the climbers to support Matthews and maybe bring back some attacks. I think Chris Hamilton's riding as well. House and obviously the general. I assume that's the full team I'm looking at, or the final team. Yeah, I think Matthews can win. I think his odds at 50-1 or whatever they are, I'll be betting on him. So I'll just say that up front. And that's because you never, just the value is there. Because if you say to me, oh, does he have a 1%, 2% chance of winning? I say no. He always seems to do very well at World Champs. He could have won one in the past. He's climbing the best form of his career. His team around him is actually pretty good. And he wasn't that far behind Alaphilippe and Wout van Aert at Milan San Remo, and who knows what would have happened if he could have followed their move on the Poggio. So, yeah, I think Matthews is a good shout for at least top 5. So I'm not even sure he is a dark horse betting-wise, but, yeah. Speaking of someone who's much shorter odds than him, who I think is too short, is Tom Pidcock. I just obviously putting a video up about him almost contemporaneously with this podcast. And before we went live on air, well, not on air, we're not a radio station, but before we started talking, Benji, when we were recording, you said Pidcock's good shout for top 5 or top 10. I can't remember. Now, what's your justification for that?
My justification is the same one that I used for a few riders already. That's the fact that they're going to be looking at Alaphilippe. They're going to be looking at Van Aert. They're going to be looking at potentially Fulsang, the main people you expect. Pidcock was not expected to ride this World Championships because he was expected to ride the U23 one because it doesn't exist this year. And because those races don't exist, the junior and the U23 one, he was selected for the actual elite team of the UK, which is honestly quite a good thing. Great Britain chose him, and I believe that really fills up the team, but also because he deserves that spot more than plenty of British riders that would probably have gotten that spot. And I'm saying that because we saw in Britannia Classic, the first podcast we actually did, that he launched a massive attack on the last hill. And if he does that on this race, he can genuinely surprise everybody. And he's not terrible when it comes to time trialing. So if he attacks, I'm not expecting him to die out on the descent and the flat part after it. I really believe that Pidcock is more of a less of a dark horse and more of a high up potential. I wouldn't say favorite yet, but between a dark horse and a favorite. And yeah, you seem to disagree, but I'm curious why.
Well, the betting market's saying he should come top 10. I think it was European Champs where he launched that attack, not Plouay, but it was the same course, I think. But yeah, practically the same race, same profile, which Nizzolo won. I don't know, I just think his team, not that good around him. Carthy looked okay at Tour. Luke Rowe, I really rate Luke Rowe. I think I call him the crosswind assassin, but yeah, how much can he help in this sort of profile for the whole, with up to the pointy end of the race? James Knox, didn't really like what I saw out of him in Tirreno either. Following the likes of Fulsang, etc., when the pace really went up. So Pidcock would pretty much be on his own from the way I look at the race. And I mean, I just made a hype video about him, and I think he'll probably win a World Tour race sooner than we think or sooner than people realise. But yeah, it's a tall order, but he's probably well rested and fresh compared to all these guys coming off the Tour. Now, maybe coming out of lockdown, doing the Tour and getting some racing in the legs is the best thing they could have been doing. I don't know. It's really hard to tell this sort of things. But yeah, it'd be great to see him doing well, competing against Pogacar, Alaphilippe, Wout van Aert. I'm sure the UCI and their sponsors would enjoy that very much. So speaking about young riders, a man who really hasn't had much hype at all in terms of one-day races, I haven't really seen him in too many one-day races, is Sepp Kuss. And is Sepp Kuss too much of a pure GC guy to be doing well in like a Liège-Bastogne-Liège style race? I'm not sure. I don't have the answer to that question. He's 26 years old. He really isn't actually as young as some of the other riders. He's much older, but 25th in Classica San Sebastian, which is comparable sort of riders that you might see for this sort of race. But yeah, 25th, 30th at the Lombardia, Trevale Varecine and Giro dell'Emilia. I don't really expect Kuss to be too competitive in this race or be a dark horse either. But he's one of the few Americans on this actually lining up. I think McNulty there, the UAE rider, Lawson Cranach and Nielsen Powers. I think they should have brought Quinn Simmons. I think it's a big mistake not bringing him. He's obviously a rider for the future. He can climb for a big guy. He did well in Tour de Hongrie. And in Britannia or not European champs, American. In Britannia, he did really well. He was like lighting up that race. He was the most aggressive rider. So yeah, I think they should have brought him. One of my other picks is obviously Kwiatkowski. You can't count him out. I really think Kwiatkowski could win this race. Just because, okay, if there's one man that can beat Wout van Aert in a sprint, if it's coming down to the last 500 metres, reduced bunch sprint, and they're all looking at Wout van Aert and he launches too early, if there's one man I'd pick to beat him, it'd be Michael Kwiatkowski more than Ulissi. Just he's done that in World Champs before. He beat an Amstel Gold, I think. He was it at World Champs? I can't remember whether that was from a break or a big bunch, but he's beaten Sagan previously. This is many years ago, though, but in, I think, was it Harelbeke or Strade Bianche, both of them. He's beaten better sprinters head-to-head. He's just a savvy guy, and he was in fantastic form at the Tour. Maybe he doesn't have that real punch and kick anymore in 2020, but yeah, I think Kwiatkowski could have a good chance if it's a reduced bunch sprint, and I think he'd be coming third in that sort of sprint. Is anyone else we've really missed, Benji? Probably Michael Woods and Fulsang are the two favourites we haven't really spoken about too much. Woods is going to be isolated, so that's going to be hard for him. He's not really going to have too much teammate support, unfortunately for him, so he's going to have to be following moves. I think it's probably going to be better for him actually to be an aggressor, attack early on one of those climbs, hope Fulsang and Alaphilippe join you, and maybe they then, once you've got a group, maybe it's the first climb on the last lap, then once you've got a group and then you can attack them on the second climb, I don't know. He's just going to have to play it by ear, try to follow wheels, but I think be aggressive if he does feel good. And Jakob Fulsang similarly doesn't have really the strongest team for this sort of parcours, and I'd be surprised if Fulsang won this race, to be honest. The Lombardia field was very, very weak. The weakest you'll generally see for that monument, just because of where it fell in the calendar. Yeah, he won it. Yeah, he was really dominant, but he still had Vlasov helping him a fair bit. And yeah, I just don't think his team is particularly good either compared to, say, the French, Belgian, or even the Italian team I kind of like a little bit more. So I think Fulsang's going to have his work cut out for him. He can't win a reduced bunch sprint against Alaphilippe, Wout van Aert, Matthews, or really maybe even Pidcock either. So, yeah, he's going to have to go away himself on the climbs. Do you think he can do it? Or do you think, I just think there's a lot of things counting against Fulsang for this race. I think third favourite is a bit short for him.
It depends on how the race is ridden. I think the weather for this day is actually pretty terrible. There's rain all day forecasted, so it's going to be a horrendous race when it comes to the weather if that actually ends up happening. And I think that will benefit Fulsang because the harder the race, the more he comes out, because he's one of the guys that can really make it happen in races that are formed in the word I've been saying all day, attrition. And we can compare it to Strade Bianche, which was a race according to a opposite weather. The heat and so forth was the issue. Now it could be the rain and such, and I think Fulsang's also pretty good in handling and combating extreme weather conditions, and that could definitely benefit him. If the race is harder, then he's going to have more of a chance. If it's not as hard and it gets decided in the last few hills, then it's going to be pretty tough for him to come out. But I would never write him off as a potential winner here for sure, because we've seen plenty of things happen in this year and last year where these races are ridden way more aggressively than we initially thought they would. Like Strade was opened up way earlier than we thought it would. LBL last year as well, and Lombardia was already battling on the Madonna del Ghisallo thanks to the work of the team of the Koenig there that pretty much tried to launch Evenepoel there. But in general, yeah, these races open up early, and I think that might actually be the case on this one. And if that's the case, that's going to benefit a rider like Fulsang. But you asked me if there are any other names that I would also pick as potential dark horses, maybe a bit further than other people. And one of the names we've been speaking about once or twice in the last few podcasts is Ryaboshenko, I think, when the Italian races were ongoing, Sabatini and so forth. And when I see this Marco, it reminds me of those Italian classics of the last month, and he's one of those riders that could top 5 a race like that. So I would not count him out to magically come up in the top 10 in the end and potentially do well. Winning is another thing. That's going to be tough. He's got no one around him, but I think that the people that don't have anyone around them are going to be able to benefit quite well of the other teams that do have a well-formed team in the chase and so forth. So if they don't have the right attack and are not with the people that are up front, they're going to have someone in that group that will potentially be behind with a better team that will need to chase. So I think that the team play will help people that are not necessarily having a good team. And another rider that is pretty much alone on the start list at the moment, unconfirmed yet, but I would like to name him Lutsenko. We saw him do great at the Tour de France. And I think that's roughly about it. Do you expect Richie Port to work for Matthews, or do you expect him to do anything for himself here?
Nah, Port has to work for Matthews, because even if he gets a gap of 10 seconds over the top of the final climb, he's going to get caught on the descent anyway, so what's the point? Unless he gets a gap of like 5 minutes. He's going to lose the time on the descent. If it's raining as well, that'll make it even worse. So he has to work for Matthews. I'll give you another name who's similar to the name you said, Benji, particularly if it's raining. Tom Skjerns, or Skjerns, sorry, I'm probably butchering it, the Latvian rider. He's good in Italy. He won Tre Valli Vaticine in 2018 ahead of Thibaut Pinot hilly race. He came third in Tre Valli Vaticine in 2019. He came second in a Tour stage. He's in pretty good form. He's won 3 stages of Tour of California. He's an underrated one-day rider. And yeah, if it's just completely shit weather, then why not someone like him, kind of like Mads Pedersen winning last year in the cold? And he likes Italy, and he can get over a hill. And yeah, he's a good shout as well. I think Tom Skjerns is a guy who I wouldn't be surprised to see in the top 10 as well. But that's pretty much it for the men's race. I think I'm gonna put Benji on the spot now. We've spoken about it at length. It's hard to say what the riders will do at this point without knowing the weather exactly. I think the weather will play, as it will usually does, a major part in the race. I think, as Benji said, it's going to be a battle of attrition, and there's going to be a group of like 40 riders left, particularly if it's raining. 40 riders left in the last 30 kilometres into the last lap. It's given that it's so hard, so hilly. Who's going to be setting the pace? Or I'm not sure exactly. Probably people will be looking at Belgium to do that, given that they have the favourite in Van Aert. I think other teams should really try and be aggressive and get, particularly France, particularly Germany with Schachmann, get their riders into a breakaway. Germany tries to get Geschke into a break with one of the French riders. Same with Sergio Henao. He probably try and sneak away if he can, or one of the other Colombians, maybe Harold Tejada, Scoins, etc. Yeah, that's what I think the other team should try and do. Try and make it hard for Belgium, make them chase a group of Harada and co in that as well. That would make the race very interesting, and that would then make sure the Wout van Aert might be isolated at the end. But yeah, I think it'll be a fight to get in the break, and then for the teams with the favourites, trying to get their riders in that break so they can sit on. And then Australia will probably have to be doing a bit of chasing as well, I dare say. I think Simon Clark will still be there at the pointy end. Who's your picks then, Benji? You got one pick to actually win the race. We've set our dark horses.
Okay, so we named plenty of riders. We named plenty of potential riders. There's other riders on the start list that can do well. Netherlands is here with Dumoulin and such. We've got Joao Almeida and Rui Costa for Portugal. But my final name for winning the World Championships, I'm going to go for Dark Horse because I like diving onto Dark Horses. And I'm actually going to go for Bagioli. I believe that he has it in him. And I think he's going to win the World Championships unexpectedly in a bit of a reduced bunch sprint, or following someone on that last hill in an attack. I think he has it. But it's going to be rough. There's puzzle pieces have to fit together, and that's for everybody. He's not the head favorite. He doesn't have the highest amount of chance, but you never know. And therefore, I'm going to be taking a look at a potential victory of him.
And yeah, that'd be insane. We haven't mentioned Mark Hirschi. He's top 5 favourite.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't see it. Yeah, but it's different getting into breaks and winning from a break. I know there's still a 90k break, etc. In the Tour, but I think that's very different to a one-day race. Like, obviously, he won. He won World Championships under 23s in
Yes.
2018, and that was ahead of Bjorn Lambrecht and Jaco Heinen and Gino Mata, and ahead of Pogacar and Ethan Hayter as well, and Jai Hindley. So yeah, he's got to be counted up there, third in Classica San Sebastian last year. But yeah, it's going to be hard. I guess they got kind of a low-key strong team with Cher, Simon Pello, and Albacini, Sylvain Dillier, Enrico Gasparotto, the Amstel Gold specialist. But yeah, we've got to be counted. We've got to mention his name. But yeah, not my pick for sure. My pick is, I don't know. I don't really have a firm one, to be honest. I'm going to go with Wout van Aert. I know that's pretty boring, but World Champs, anything can happen. Just what he did at Milan-San Remo, the way he was climbing it, Tour de France. Yeah, I think Wout van Aert is my pick to win the race. But even though I started the top of this show by saying his odds were too short, that doesn't mean I'm going to bet on him. But it does mean I think he still is the most likely rider to win. And I think Michael Matthews and Maximilian Schachmann will be. It's hard to say if Schachmann will be there. I think if it's a break, if it's like a break or a gap on the climb, I think Schachmann could win. But reduced bunch sprint, Wout van Aert with Matthews second once again. Any last words on the men's road race, Benji?
I'm looking forward to seeing who wears the rainbow bands. As you said, we had a situation that is odd as AF this year in the sense that Pedersen did not wear it too long, and that sucks for him, but there's not much we can do about it, nor he. So someone else is going to wear it in the classics, in the other races. I hope that it's a rider we can see in plenty of races and be active all season. And if that is in a deserved victory and such, I'm fine with anybody taking it. So I just want a good race, and I hope it's entertaining, and I hope it opens up quite early that we don't have to wait till the last hill for anything to happen. But I want to see people that we don't necessarily expect try and do early things, and yeah, I want to see some fun race action, and I look forward to the actual race.
All right, that's the men's race. We've gone long enough on the men's. Let's talk about the women's race now. And just a warning to you all, we've missed the women's ITT. We're too late on it. Sorry, that wasn't deliberate or by our choice. But I feel for the purpose of the women's road race preview, given that you're going to be listening to it in the next after the women's ITT is finished, I feel like we have to tell you, and spoiler alert, so turn off the pod now if you don't want the women's ITT spoiled, and then come back to the pod. But otherwise, Chloe Dygert crashed in the women's ITT. I haven't really seen more details about it, but I don't know whether she'll be right for the road race or whether she's injured. I hope to God she's okay. But yeah, I'm not sure whether that will affect. It probably will affect a little bit our choices for the women's road race. Whether she's able to continue or not, that's not confirmed yet. That's just happened. But we have to. Yeah, I feel like the preview will only work if we acknowledge that that's happened. But it was quite a heavy crash, I believe, and so I'm gonna assume that Dygert isn't actually competing in the women's road race just because it is in a couple of days, and that was a heavy crash. But yeah, now back to the women's ITT. 5 laps of the same course, the same climbs, a hard race for the women once again. And the other news, which is just insane, is that Annemiek van Vleuten will be racing in this road race with a goddamn broken wrist, Benji. How shocked are you by that? And yeah, I'm honestly pretty shook by it.
Yeah, that's crazy, but I'm also the kind of person that's not always happy with people riding with injuries. We had Craddock ride out a Tour de France, I think, with a pretty harsh injury from one of the earliest stages. We had Bennett crash on the first stage of a Tour de France in the past, and he basically rode out that Tour de France as Lanterne Rouge with injuries. We had Wout Poels ride out the Tour de France with a rib injury. Now, Van Vleuten, she is the obvious favorite if she didn't have an injury. This is going to influence how people expect her to ride that day. I don't know what to think about riding with injuries. It's a bit of a topic I don't like. I don't like people riding with injuries. That's just in general, but it's their choice, so we gotta live with it. And I've got the feeling that she will still be playing a pretty important role in the race, even with the injury, because as reported, she apparently doesn't really have any trouble riding with that brace she has on. So yeah, I don't know what to expect from it, but it's quite original and we haven't seen it much, so I can't really judge on historical precedents of people riding with braces in their world championship.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that she's able to ride the road race rather than the TT. You'd think that they'd maybe have found out a way for her to lock her hand into position for the TT, whereas the road race, they'll be moving around, like they'll be descending like 15 times down these climbs. I don't know. I kind of agree with you, Benji. A little bit sketchy. I hope it doesn't. I hope it's safe for her to do that. I assume it will be, but yeah, I thought she was going to be able to do the TT. I was kind of surprised that she's doing the road race. And the women's race, it's been dominated by the Dutch team for many years. Like, was it Chantal Blaak won? Mariana Voss has won constantly world championships. Annemiek van Vleuten last year, 100k solo breakaway to win in Yorkshire, just insane. And yeah, they got a strong team once again, even with Van Vleuten kind of battered and bruised. They'd still be the favourites of the race, really. They've got Van der Breggen, she won Giro Rosa. Like, I know she won Giro Rosa because, like, Van Vleuten was going to win that race, let's be honest, if she hadn't crashed and got chopped, but she didn't, and Van der Breggen was still the second best rider on GC and took out the win. Maybe if Spratt had been there, who knows, but Van der Breggen probably still better than Spratt. Amy Peters, strong rider, Demi Vollering, Mariana Voss, Ellen van Dijk, they're still the strongest team in the race. I thought with Van Vleuten out and Van der Breggen not looking as good, it might be a bit more of an open race. They're still not my pick to win, by the way. I have a different pick to win. But yeah, the Dutch women, they've been the strongest team for so many years, and tactically, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. I think when Chantal van den Broek Blaak won in 2017, she was in a break with, like, I swear, Voss, Van Vleuten and Van der Breggen, and they let her attack first to see if someone else would chase before the finish. It's pretty smart. She got the Dubski. But yeah, let's just run through some of the favourites first. I've jumped straight to the Holland team. Favourites probably are Voss, Van der Breggen, Longo Borghini, Dijknen, Van Vleuten, Nuia Doma, Liana Lippert, the German, Brodie Chapman, Lucy Kennedy, Amanda Spratt's injured. I don't think she's racing. But yeah, they're the main favourites that I see. Cecily Uttrup Ludwig has to be picked. I'd expect her to be getting a top 5, to be honest. So it is pretty mixed across the board. Mavi Garcia, how's she going to go? Now the American team, which is probably would have been top 5 strongest team. I'm not sure if this is the final team, but yeah, Dygert. I'm assuming I have to make an assumption on one side of it. I'm assuming she's not going to be racing the women's road race. She's out, but they got Rivera, sort of sprinter, Stevens, Thomas, Taylor Wills, Ruth Winder. They're not looking as strong without Dygert, who I think would have got, I don't know, top 5. She was looking really strong. Mavi Garcia, who looked good at Strada Bianca for Spain, I think she could go pretty well, but it's a long race. The British team, I think, is where I think the race will become much more interesting compared to last year. Like Van Vleuten winning 100k break, it's insane, etc., but it isn't that exciting in terms of like competitive tension for the race. And Lizzie Banks looks in magic form. She won another Giro Rosa stage. She did really well in, GP Plouay behind my favourite for the race, Lizzie Deignan. I think Lizzie Deignan could go really well here. She's won 3 GP Plouay. She won this year. She won World Champs in 2015. She won Ronde van Vlaanderen in 2016. Won La Course this year as well in a sprint ahead of Mariana Voss. She won Strada Bianca in 2016. So she's come back and she's looking magic in 2020, winning La Course and winning GP Plouay. And now she's got Lizzie Banks, who is on Equipe Paul Car, not on her Trek team. Now they're on the same team, and Lizzie Banks is looking like one of the strongest breakaway riders in the world. Yeah, I think the British team looks so strong and could really put up a big fight against the Dutch team, who, suffering from Van Vleuten injury and Van der Breggen not looking as immortal as previous years, and this being very, very hilly indeed for Mariana Voss. I know she won 5 Flèche Wallonne, but yeah, she hasn't won one since 2013. I think of Voss more as a sort of pure sprinter or reduced bunch sprinter, more like Matthews now, rather than someone like she's always been better than Fulsang. I hate doing women and male comparisons, but yeah, I just think she's lost a bit of a climbing ability in those maybe 5 to 8 minute climbs. Still got that kick and the reduced bunch sprints, but I think the British team could make it hard for her. Same with maybe Liana Lippert as well for the Germans. But yeah, am I missing any favourites there, Benji, or missing anyone? Have I underplayed the Australian team with Grace Brown, Rachel Neylan, who came second in World Champs like over 8 years ago, the veteran? Is there anyone I'm missing?
I don't think you're missing anyone outside of other teams. I do think that Amanda Spread is actually confirmed to be in the team despite the injury, but I'm not sure about that. BCS at least confirms it, which is unexpected for me as well because I didn't really see
Nah,
that
she's
coming.
out. She's
She's
out.
out? Okay, then the
Yeah,
start list
yeah,
is
yeah.
wrong. But with the likes of Mavi Garcia and Utrup Ludwig, those are really my two picks for this. Utrup Ludwig doesn't have really a amazing team surrounding her, getting her into this race, but after Amelia, I've got pretty good confidence that she can finish off a race like this. Only difference is that this one is not finishing on the hill; it's on the flat part. After that, we've got Mavi Garcia, as you said, being one of the more one of the people that do certainly have an opportunity here. And I think with a decent support behind her in the form of Santesteban and such, I think she's going to Mitchelton, right? Santesteban, that's recently announced. But anyway, I believe that she can be real support for Mavi Garcia and potentially be there in the last few laps with her still. So yeah, in the end, there's plenty of opportunities for plenty of people to be important here. Netherlands is always great in World Championships, so it would be harsh not to count them as potential favorites here. But the thing is, Van Vleuten, I just don't see it happening with the Braves, and maybe she surprises everybody that
It would
she
be
still can
insane.
do it. It would be insane. Imagine winning with one hand. It would literally be the meme that we are genuinely joking about sometimes because she wins so many races that we say she could basically win the other races with one hand. But that's factually not really true. But now we will have a race that actually defines whether she can win races with one hand. So at least that's one fun thing we get out of this as well. But honestly, just the Dutch team in general, I expect stuff from that. Anna van der Breggen, like you said, is going to be important. Yeah. Outside of the people you name, I can't really find out other names that I'd say these really have an opportunity of surprising everybody and coming out with the victory here, to be honest.
Okay, I'm going to give you two dark horses who could do pretty well. They're two Kiwis, Neve Fisher Black and her brothers in the JV development squad. Pretty sure he's a fan of the Lanterne Rouge, if I'm not mistaken. But she had a really, really good result in the last stage of the Giro Rosa, Neve Fisher Black. She's 20 years old. She won Gravel and Tar La Femme at the start of this year. She won New Zealand World Champs road race. Yeah, she looked so good in. She finished outside the time limit and DNF'd at Plouay and Strade, but I think she could actually do a pretty good result here. I know it's a step up, but still. And also her teammate, Michaela Harvey, who came fifth on GC at Giro Rosa. She won the youth classification. She won, I think, a stage in, what was it? Yeah, Tour de Bretagne last year. She came third in the stage in Giro Rosa this year. And that was with the big dogs too. She was climbing, following attacks from Longa Borghini, Under Van der Breggen, etc. Giro Rosa. Look it up and check out my recap, which I'll be uploading simultaneously with this for the Giro Rosa last stages. So, yeah, I think they're my two dark horses, two Kiwis to do well. I think Italian squad is strong. Ciccani, Soraya Paladin, CCC rider who normally was leading up for Voss, I think, is Giro Rosa. And obviously, I think their team leader is going to be Longa Borghini. But the thing I love most about women's cycling and why I think it's so easy to market women's cycling, if it just a better job was done, is because I can almost guarantee you this is going to happen. And they are going to have the top 10 names battling it out on the final climbs or wherever it is. They will have all the favourites there battling it out. Ludwig, Chapman, Kennedy, Mavi Garcia, probably Michaela Harvey, Nui Adoma, who else? Dygert if she's there, Van der Breggen, Van Vleuten, Mariana Voss, Liana Lippert, I probably missed anyone, and the British riders, Dumoulin as well. They will have them there battling it out, and yeah, I can't wait to see what happens. As I said, I think the British team are pretty well drilled. I think Dumoulin and Banks just work so well together. Lippert didn't look like she was good enough to beat all of those girls, women up a steep pinch or up these climbs. From what I saw in Giro Rosa, she was being set up pretty well by Sunweb, but not being able to finish it off. Obviously interviewed her back at the start of this year. Ashley Moolman as well for South Africa. Usually, yeah, I don't think she's going to be able to actually pull off a top three, but I could be mistaken. She got 40 pro wins, but they were mostly back in sort of 14 to 17, 18 region. I'm not sure I'm seeing the same form for her at the moment. It's riders like Mavi Garcia looking way stronger. But yeah, I'm excited for the women's race. I always watch it just almost, with more interest sometimes than the men's, just because it's one of the times in the year we guaranteed to get really good coverage of their race, and you see it and you're like, oh, so this is what it should be like. And I should mention, by the way, I kind of disagree that Ludwig won't have too much teammate help, Benji. Like, she's got Amelie Diedrichsen. I know she's more of a sprinter, etc., but depending on the pace they got the climbs, former world champion, maybe too hard for her. They've got Emma Norsgaard, she's coming up. They got Julie Leith. They got some pretty good riders. Julie Leith came second in their road race, National Champs road race, behind Emma Norsgaard, and they actually beat Ludwig, who came third. So I think they've got a low-key pretty good squad, Danish team. The Belgian team, Benji, it's got a squad maybe not confirmed yet, but yeah, do you see anything coming out of the Belgian squad? Do you think, Julie van der Velde? She won Flanders Ladies Classic last year, but not shown too much this year. More of a time trialist than a sprinter, maybe a little bit too hard for her. Do you think anyone from the Belgian team can surprise? You're the man on the ground.
Honestly, I don't think so. And I don't want to be harsh on the Belgian team or anything, but they have riders that can do well and such, but I'm not sure this terrain really fits them perfectly. We've got a really informed Lotte Kopecky right now, but I don't really feel like this really fits her. And because of that, I'm not really expecting too much of the team, because in general, Lotte Kopecky is, in my opinion, by far the best Belgian we have on the scene right now. And yeah, if something had to come from the Belgian team, then it would be her, but I don't think it really fits.
Yeah, another name that must be mentioned is, two names, but the main name, I think the French team will be riding for Audrey Cordon-Ragot. She won a stage in Ardèche. After lockdown finished, she current French national champion, won that this year. She did pretty well in the women's European road race. She actually came fifth. So in that group of Vleuten obviously won that, but that was behind Longoborghini, Nui Domer, and Chantal van den Broek Black. Yeah, she came fifth. She beat Brunel, Kopecky, Voss, Cicchini, and Amy Peters. So I think Audrey Cordon-Ragot, she's 31, but I think she's coming in looking like she's actually in her peak right now based on those results. She's looking really, really good. Good time trials too. Maybe she attacks early and tries to hold it. I don't know. But yeah, I'd be remiss not to mention her, as well as Juliette Lebeau, who I think is a Sunweb rider. She normally supports Liana Lippert. She's a sort of all-rounder, decent climber. She will be probably good at helping. Yeah, Audrey Cordon-Ragot. But that's, the women's road race. Benji, who's your pick to take out the W? I know we're dealing with a lot of uncertain information at the moment, even uncertain start lists, which is kind of crazy this far out. And now injuries to Van Vleuten, injury to Dijgert. But yeah, I still got to put you on the spot. Who's your pick to take out the W?
I'm going to go for Trup Ludwig, and it might be a bit of a biased option due to the fact that I believe that she would be an amazing representative of women's cycling if she is world champion, due to, well, she's out there. She's got the charisma to present the sport like this and bring it forward, and I believe she would be great as world champion. I believe she has the opportunity of doing so. But I've also seen I don't know which race it was, but a race where she wasn't up there with the others, and because of that, that is the only reason I would be doubting a possibility of her taking the W. But yeah, I'm gonna say the name Utrecht Ludwig.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you that I think she'll be up there. But I think I'm picking Diagnan. I think she's the on form rider. I think Longa Borghini will be actually quite aggressive. But yeah, I'm picking Lizzie Diagnan to take out her second world championship. But I want to make this point as well, just before we get to the men's ITT. And if any women's world tour rider ever wants to use my platform on my YouTube channel, this podcast, they want to do an interview or anything like that, it's always open to them. I've been trying in vain. Sometimes more successful to get some of the men's riders on, unfortunately. But even though I've had less female riders on the channel, I actually try equally as hard and reach out to just as many of the Women's World Tour riders. So if anyone ever do an interview, talk about a race, talk about a win or whatever, platform's open if you want to talk about it. Same goes for the men, but particularly want to extend that invitation to the female riders to do our part in assisting in more coverage of their races. But yeah, can't wait for their race. Now on to the men's ITT, Benji. This is one I'm very, very excited for, particularly that little teaser we had in Tirreno just 2 weeks ago. That's stage one, which Filippo Ganna straight up destroyed. 32k, I think it might be 31.7 k's. Imola to Imola. I'm not sure how much elevation it is. It's pretty flat, isn't it? From what I can see. And yeah, it's got an intermediate time check at 14.5 k's into it. There's a little 400 meter climb at 6.5% before I think they enter the Ferrari Autodrome. That shouldn't bother them too much, but still, few little climbs and rises. It's not pancake flat like we saw at the European Championships that was in Holland, I think, last year. And yeah, the favourites. It's a magic list. Rowan Dennis, obviously the back-to-back champion in the men's time trial. Even last year when he didn't even have I think he wasn't riding for a trade team at all. Him and Durbridge is, in my view, the strongest pairing by far. The strongest pairing. Matthias Brendel, good time trials. Wout van Aert, he's one of the favourites. Alex Dowsett, Grant Thomas. Who else is there? Patrick Bevan, Tom Dumoulin, Remy Cavagna, Casper Askren, Stefan Kung. Did I say Victor Campenaerts yet? Eduardo Affini, Mikkel Bjerg, the under-23, back-to-back world champ. And then we're sort of getting into the weeds with Bodnar and co. But yeah, the favourites, it looks like the betting market's saying it's a two-horse race. They got Ganna with like a 40% chance of winning and Rowan Dennis with about a 38% chance of winning. And then Stefan Kung at 8-1. Tom Dumoulin, Wout van Aert also at 8-1. And I think that's too polarised. I think this is different to the Tirreno stage one or whatever that ITT was at Tirreno, that power one that Ganna just destroyed. And I know it's not a hilly course, and I know that Ganna is a guy that can ride for longer than just 10 minutes, but I think $2.25 and what the market's saying is a little bit too short for Filippo Ganna. I do like some other riders to do really well in this ITT, particularly Luke Durbridge. He won Australian ITT national champs again this year, and he did massive numbers there. And I think someone like Luke Durbridge could do a really, really good result, and I think he's going to come top 3 in the World Champs ITT. Now, maybe he won't win it, but yeah, what do you think, Benji? If between the road race and the ITT, who do you think Wout van Aert's more likely to win, this one or the road race?
I'd say the road race, because on the time trial, you've got the situation where there's people that come from the Tour de France and don't necessarily have had this on their preparation beforehand and potentially didn't recon it as much as, well, I'm pretty sure Wout van Aert didn't recon it as much as, for example, Rohan Dennis and Ganna, because those two people have been preparing for this race basically their entire season. It's what their season revolves around, this race. And it's really that polarizing effect between those two riders that, in my opinion, will take the foreground because I believe that they are more prepared for this ITT. Maybe I might be looking at tunnel vision at two people at the moment, but we saw it last year. Dennis was not really out there throughout the whole season. I think he got second in an Algarve TT this year, just behind Evenepoel. By the way, so sad Evenepoel's not here, but that's just the side. Really unfortunate. But Dennis was also third at that Tirreno one. We haven't really had a real proper long one this year, a long time trial, so we don't really have anything to point at except for the last World Championships, which Dennis was 2 minutes better, I think, than Ghana. But you can't compare that anymore. Ghana's a different man since last year. He looks way better, way more informed, and way more prepared. And I believe that Filippo Ganna might actually upset Dennis here. And I'm looking at two people, like it feels like it's gonna be mainly that. I find it really hard to judge on time trials in a year that there's hardly been any. So we can't look at many time trials this year and say this guy's in form or this guy's in form. But on the other hand, last year we looked at all the time trials in the year and we said Dennis is not looking too well, isn't he? But well, he was mainly prepared for that race and then just smashed it. So it's really hard to guess and it's really hard to predict. I'm guessing that the teammate of Ghana, Afini, hasn't really been looking good this year, and
No.
therefore I'm not expecting as much from him as from other people on the parcours. Asgren, I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it. I think Bjerg might actually just be quite well in the top 10 there. He was twice U23 champion, I think, and in general a really good
Three
rider,
times.
but 3 times? Wow. And
And he's Pogacar's ITT coach.
oh yeah, we said
Not
we heard
joking.
that.
Not joking.
Yeah, you said that yesterday, I think, in the Tour de France recap. But yeah, Mikkel Bjerg, I don't think he's on the level yet to
No.
compete for a victory, but potentially a top 5 might be in the cards and a perfect day for him. One name I do want to name outside of all these people is rider that comes out of the Tour de France, which rode the first intermediate check of that time trial in the Tour de France, the best out of everybody. Remy Cavagna, he's a monster on the flat, and this parcours is flat. I can't call it all out flat because there's one hill in it of like 400 meters of 7%, but the riders that are flat TTs can get over a 700-meter climb. I would expect a 400-meter climb, so it's even less. But in general, Remy Cavagna is one of the names I would write down. Is that one of the names you had on your menu or?
Yeah, Cavagna, I think he looked magic at the Tour de France ITT. That was 30 Ks, similar distance, with a little bit of a climb in it before the Planche de Belleville, and Cavagna set, maybe second time, equal with Tadej Pogacar, I think. But he lost European ITT champs 25 Ks long. He lost that to Stefan Kung by 17 seconds. Campenaerts was 21 seconds back. Obviously, Filippo Ganna wasn't there. And yeah, like, are these random Germans that that aren't on World Tour teams? Are they competing in this race? It's like Justin Wolf came seventh in European champs. Yeah, that would be. I don't think they're actually competing here. I think it's Max Waldscheid and Jascha Schutterlin. But yeah, the two teammates on Ineos, Dennis and Ganna, are first and second favourites. And yeah, my pick is, if you want to beat the champ, you've got to beat the champ. And that's the most boomer take. I say a boomer take every pod, and that's my boomer take for this pod. I got to go with Rowan Dennis. This is his race. Like, when the calendar comes out, and it was going to be Olympics ITT, well, that was his like big priority, and now this is his priority for the entire year. And yeah, it's not a 10k power TT. It's not as long as it could be. I think if it was a 48k time trial with a lot more hills, like in Yorkshire last year, I think I'd be saying it with a lot more confidence that he'd be beating Ghana. Still not certain, but it's not. It's going to be really finely balanced between those two. But Ghana he's just a monster. The power he puts out. Same with Cavagna. Like, Cavagna, he's not very aero. Like, compared to Campenaerts, they're night and day. But the watts that Cavagna can put out is just crazy. But yeah, I'm not sure. I have to go with Dennis, but obviously I wouldn't be surprised if Ganna beat him. I'm not an idiot. But I think Durbridge will be up there for top 3 as well. One man who I don't think will do too well, who I think is way too short, is Tom Dumoulin. I don't think he's in the 2017 form. I know he's saying he did the same watts in that TT. I don't believe him. Tom Dumoulin likes to say things. Maybe he said it was a similar performance, but yeah, I don't see that. And I saw out of him in the Tour de France overall just suggested he's not the same rider yet as he was in 2017. That's not his fault. He was way better than I thought he could be because he's just coming back from that injury. But yeah, he's not on the level of Dennis, Kung, Ganna, even Luke Durbridge. I don't think for this TT or Wout van Aert on the. It's interesting though because he beat Wout van Aert on the flat for the first 30 k's of the Tour de France, and then Wout van Aert smoked him on the climb. Yeah, it's interesting how they're the same odds. I don't think Wout van Aert, has a great chance of winning this ITT. I think Kung is pretty solid, and I'd actually be expecting Cavagna to beat Wout van Aert in this time trial if I had to do a head-to-head, to be honest, just because Cavagna is a flat monster. But yeah, they're my thoughts on the TT. It's hard to say. There's not really any strategy involved, particularly when there was a lot of strategy involved and a lot to talk about for that Tour de France time trial, but this is a flat one. So, yeah, I'm keen to see it. I'll be really excited. And I hope someone sneaks in the top 5. I think Patrick Bevan, he's just a rider who never gets spoken about. He's a pretty good rider, and I think he could also get in the top 5. He seems to do well sometimes in World Champs. But yeah, that's the men's ITT. Any last thoughts on that, Benji? Did you already say Ganna, or I'll let you confirm your pick?
I did not even get an opportunity to speak. Oh,
well, I'm giving it to you now.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna give you more than just one name. I believe that Ganna's gonna win ahead of Dennis, so I'm gonna oppose you on that. And it's not because you picked Dennis. I just believe that Ganna's gonna be winning in his own country. It would be beautiful. Now, additionally, I'm going to tell you that Alex Dowsett is going to beat Geraint Thomas.
Get the fuck out of here.
No. It is going to happen. It is going to happen. Thomas is an overrated time trialist. And I keep saying it. He is good in third weeks in time trials of Grand Tours, but in a one-day race, he's not going to do it. So, no. I'm writing him off. For a top 5 even. He's going to get like 8th, 9th, maybe 10th. But Alex Dowsett will be like 7th or 6th just ahead of him. So, Alex Dowsett will beat Geraint Thomas. Hands down.
You know the only Tour de France ITT Geraint Thomas ever won? It was on stage 1 in 2017, and he beat Kung by 5 seconds.
It was a prologue.
He beat Tony Martin by 8 seconds. I don't care. It's still not third week.
It doesn't count. It's a prologue.
Okay, well, still. Because I watch Alex Dowsett's YouTube channel, you know what Alex Dowsett said the one day in his career where he saw someone turn up and he decided, I can't win today, and then he just completely cooked his performance and almost mailed it in, is when Geraint Thomas turned up to the British National Championships ITT, whenever that was in 2018, I think. So, yeah, I don't see it happening. No, sorry. I think Thomas has won. Yeah, he's won 5 professional ITTs in his career, one of which was the British one, I think. He's won Romandy Prologue back in 2012, and the last ITT he won, apart from the British one, was back in 2018 at the Volta à Algarve. He came 3rd. That was how long was it? 20.3 kilometers, I think. He beat Campenaerts and Kung once again by 11 and 19 seconds. Dowsett's never done that, man. Or it doesn't look like he's able to do that. But then again, Thomas, that's 2 years ago. And, maybe we'll have a friendly wager, or actually not really friendly. We're not going to have a friendly wager. We're going to have a wager on this, Benji, I think, off air. Yeah, I'm sure people in the comments below will, on this YouTube video for this, will voice their opinions about Thomas v. Dowsett. Now, I like Dowsett. I hope he does really well. And if he comes top 5, then that'll be really good. I hope he does, because he needs a contract for next year. So I do hope he gets that. But yeah, that's the men's ITT. You picked Ganna. I picked Dennis. I had to go with Dennis as well, legally, as an Australian. And the women's ITT, exactly the same distance. I must say, it's just finished as we've been speaking, and you're going to be listening to this, and you're all hardcore cycling fans. So I'm not going to offend you and waste your time by previewing a race that's already finished as this is uploaded, nor am I going to read you out the results either because we haven't had a chance to analyse or watch it. Fortunately, Chloe Dygert, as we're reading it on Twitter, she's conscious and talking, so that's fantastic to hear. But I hope she's okay, and I'm going to go watch that right now after I upload this at 1:30 in the morning. But yeah, how excited are you for the World Champs, Benji? I love World Champs Week. I fucking love it, but it's just the way it's straight after the tour. I'm a bit more recovered now. I feel like the change to Imola from Martini has kind of thrown me a bit and maybe a bit less excited for it. I don't know. There's something like about when there's the Olympics as well, how they've got the months of lead up excitement for this host city, and then they've just changed all of a sudden to where is it? Imola? What the hell? What's the route? What's the profile? And who's going? And there's riders dropping in and out, but still, I'm excited, and I can't wait to see what will happen, particularly in the women's and the women's road race, because I don't have really a good feel for how that's going to play out. But yeah, what's your one thing to look for this week, Benji? What's one thing out of all the 3 races remaining that you'd say keep your eye on that rider or this tactical thing or what in any of the races?
That is like a very difficult question without any preparation. So I'm going to go for a road race thing, I guess. And what I am hoping for, the thing, I first want to respond to the initial question of whether there's more hype or less hype for me. There's a bit less hype, but I feel like it's not necessarily because of the lead up that's different. Yes, it's after a Grand Tour, but usually it's after the Vuelta, so it's kind of similar. What is different for me is that usually we have plenty of junior and U23 races in advance, and watching those races progresses my hype towards the actual men's race as well. And now I just feel like it's needing a bit of a kickstart because we don't have as many lead-up days to it in the UCI World Championships week. Now, I'm not saying that I'm less hyped for the women's race than the men's race because I'm expecting that one to be extremely aggressive, and because of that, I'm looking forward to that as well. So, in general, I just hope that we have entertaining races, and I don't necessarily need anything else. A Belgian world champion would be amazing, so just want to point that out. That'd be amazing. And potentially the Australians just not do well, just like out of the bag very early on, and I'd be a happy man.
Yeah, I can't believe we're 90 minutes into the podcast and I haven't mentioned, I've not done my good job setting the table for us here, that there's no junior or U23 competition in this World Champs. And I think that's really, really disappointing. It's just so disappointing. I'm not going to go in and lay blame it anywhere. I feel like maybe it could have been possible, but then I'm just happy we've got World Champs. Yeah, it's COVID's fault. I'm happy we've got World Champs at all. It is a real shame they couldn't do that and couldn't organise it. As I said before, it's their one opportunity, some of these riders, to compete in that level before they move on up to World Tour ranks or Women's World Tour ranks, or they grow out of the age bracket. And I love those. It's the first time you see them and they get professional level coverage. That's where we saw Quinn Simmons for the first time last year. So we saw Hirschi, saw Neil Zekov winning last year. I know on a personal level, speaking to the sort of the younger Australians, they're so disappointed they couldn't do L'Avenir and World Champs. Now they probably wouldn't have been able to leave the country anyway. But yeah, that's a real shame, and that's why I guess we're going to see Tom Pidcock in the men's elite race. But yeah, World Champs, not a week, 4 days of racing just before the Giro d'Italia. We got to be grateful that it's happening at all in the year we've had. We're G'd up. I'm grateful to Benji being the most agile co-host ever because I literally never prepare or tell him the questions. I think of them as I ask them, and then he still answers them with aplomb. But thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this long preview of the World Champs, I enjoyed talking to Benji about it, mulling over what's going to happen. Make sure to give us a review on the Apple Podcast player. That really helps out a lot, actually. it helps out more than you can imagine, and it really warms our hearts seeing that as well, seeing your kind comments. But hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoy the coverage. Make sure to hit us up on #LRCP if you've got any questions relating to the World Champs before and after the race, because we'll obviously be doing a recap podcast of the World Champs. Hope you will.